Welcome to T21Mom.
Hi, friends, and welcome back to the T21Mom podcast. I'm your host, Mary, and this is episode 148. On this show, we talk about everything from the special needs parenting journey to self-care and how we can live our best and most authentic lives. And today we're sharing, quite literally, stories on disabilities. And I'm so excited to be joined by children's author Jeana Atkison. Jeana recently published a beautiful children's book called How to Eat a Cupcake, which not only celebrates the joy of cupcakes, but also gently weaves in representation of different disabilities in a very natural and inclusive way. Let's go have a listen. Hi, friends. Welcome back to the T21Mom podcast. I'm your host, Mary, and today we're sharing, literally, stories on differences. Joining me is a very special guest, children's author Jeana Atkison. Jeana, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mary. I am so excited to be here.
We're happy to have you. Now, I'm really excited to chat with you today about your new children's book called How to Eat a Cupcake, which of course sounds delicious. But before we dive in, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you get into writing?
Yeah, of course. So I am a mother of 4 amazing kiddos. We live on a couple of acres in Idaho, and I just love seeing my kids be able to run a little wild. We love to get outdoors and explore, and we are also very avid readers. I grew up reading a lot of books and have always read a lot of books to my kids. So that is kind of what initially got me into writing. We just love reading. I'm the crazy lady at the library that will bring a wagon to fill up with books instead of my kids don't even have bags. We just have a wagon. So we always max out our library cards. But what really started my journey was working for a homeschool curriculum company. I was given the opportunity to write curriculum for them and design the curriculum as well, and I really enjoyed it. And then they gave me the opportunity to write a picture book for them, and that was my favorite. I just loved that process, and it reignited in me a childhood dream that I had, which was to be a writer, which is probably true for most kids that read a lot. But that's a little bit of how I got started. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Now, I really enjoyed your book. It's such a fun and creative story. The illustrations I thought were just absolutely beautiful. They were so colorful and so vibrant. I mean, you sort of touched on it, but what inspired you to write How to Eat a Cupcake? And I'm guessing it's not really your first book because you said you've already written another book.
So, yeah, well, the one that I was doing for the homeschool curriculum company didn't end up getting finished, which was very sad. But so the How to Eat a Cupcake was my first book. Since then, I have published 3 others. But what inspired that book is I just really started having all these ideas and I would write them down. And one day I had an idea to create books that were like how-to books for kids, but about things that you wouldn't naturally need to learn. Does that make sense? Like, just kind of funny. Like, you don't really have to learn how to eat a cupcake. But then I was watching one of my favorite TV shows where this host visits amazing nonprofits, and he visited a bakery called Special Needs and Treats, and they employ people with Down syndrome and other disabilities. And they were just so amazing. And they had cupcakes, and I don't know, just the cupcakes clicked in my mind. And I thought, I would really love to write a book about, how people eat cupcakes differently. And that's just fine. And there are all sorts of things we do in our lives that we do just a little bit differently. And that is totally fine. And so I wanted to focus on Down syndrome in particular, because especially for my kids, I want my kids to not look at someone and say, oh, they do something differently and that's bad. I want my kids to be able to say, no, they just do things differently. And we all do, right? To be a little more inclusive that way. So that is kind of what got that book started.
Oh, okay. So it was sort of your introduction to, which we'll talk a bit about later, but about the bakery, because I thought that was really quite cool that it's kind of the premise of the story is based on a real bakery, which I thought was
Yeah.
fabulous. And I love the name. Like it's Special Needs Kneads, which is a nice play on words, which I think is really cool. And where is that bakery? Is it in your hometown?
No, it's actually in Georgia. And I actually get to go this week to their gala and meet them for the first time. So I'm super excited. We've been working together with this book project for about a year. So I'm really excited to go and see the bakery, eat their cupcakes. Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun.
Oh, that's really fantastic. Wow, that's kind of almost like the full circle moment, going to the gala and
Yeah.
oh, wonderful. Now I remember reading, I was trying to find it in like maybe you told me, but I was read somewhere, possibly in our correspondence, that only about 3% of books feature, and I could be wrong on the percentage, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but only about 3% of books feature a character with a disability, which I feel is shockingly low because a disability could be almost anything. And, what are your thoughts on that? And do you think we're seeing a shift in the publishing world towards better representation?
Yeah, so first of all, I do think we are seeing a shift, which I personally applaud and I think is so important. One of my purposes in writing children's books has been to improve that statistic. That's such a hard word to say. It is about 3.5%, I believe, is the research that I've found. But again, that is improving. So that percentage could be increasing even as we speak. There are a lot of people that are recognizing how important it is that kids be able to see themselves in books. Books, in particular, are such a powerful tool for kids to, gain new perspective and develop empathy and learn, kind of by walking in someone else's shoes through the story. And as we include more include more disabilities and things in stories, that will really help all children to be able to, learn fully from a book experience.
I mean, you brought up an interesting point is because I did talk with another woman. It's got to be almost 2 years ago now. And they're a Black family and their youngest son has Down syndrome. And she said, when he was born, I found nothing. Like there was no representation of a Black family with a child with Down syndrome or with disability. So she started kind of sort of what you've done is she started her own little book series about her son and I. And so it's, which is good, but like obviously she saw the need and has done it. It's similar to yourself that we need to do that because like you said, for kids to realize it's just a part of our society that our kids are there and, we want them to be included because I know for the Down syndrome community, we're very much pro-inclusion. I think most parents want their child to be included regardless of whatever is going on. So yeah, it's lovely to see that it's coming out in the children's books and that they're so like your book was so engaging. And like I said, the colors I thought were just beautiful. They were just so bright. And, I just really enjoyed all the art in the book. It was really lovely. And, obviously for those who haven't read it yet, I mean, you talked a little bit about it, but can you share a little bit about what the premise is of How to Eat a Cupcake?
Yeah, you bet. So the story is, as you said, it takes place at this special needs and treats bakery. And so one of the characters is based on one of their employees who works there. His name is Andrew. And his sister decides to have a birthday party at the bakery. Well, our main character, Charlie, is a little OCD. You could say he's OCD or a little autistic. He's just a little different, which is great. And so he is not sure if a different party is okay. And so as he goes to this party and sees his friends doing things in different ways. Each of them is eating a cupcake in a different way. He realizes that, they are all enjoying how they're eating the cupcake. They're all happy. And so maybe, being different is really a great thing because it's what brings us personal joy. How we enjoy doing things, how we're able to do things. And then ultimately, he learns that his differences are good too, because he is able to use his little different quirky behavior to help one of the other characters. So because he's OCD, he likes to read things very carefully, and he remembered something from the menu that helped another kid at the party. So I won't give away too much. You'll have to read the story. But in the end, he really just sees how amazing it is that we all eat cupcakes in different ways.
And we all enjoy them. We just might eat them a little bit differently. So, which is fun. Yeah. Yes. And I quite enjoyed all the different descriptions of the way people eat them. I thought, okay, I'd have to try that.
Yeah. When people talk to me about the book, it's so funny because you would think there wouldn't be a lot of ways to eat a cupcake. Mm-hmm. But as I wrote the book, I realized that people really do it so differently. Some people will split it in half and make the cupcake sandwich, or eat the frosting first, or not eat the frosting at all. It's just been really fun to talk to people who have read the book, and they're like, oh yeah, I eat mine like this, or, just everything's a little different.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed the cupcake sandwich, so I think I need to try that one. That was the one I liked.
Yeah, that is one way that my husband really likes to eat a cupcake.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, it's obviously a children's book, but who do you see as the ideal audience for your book?
Well, I wrote it primarily for children that are about 5 to 8. Mm-hmm. I have read the story to preschoolers or children that are even younger than that, and kids that are older than that. I've had teenagers tell me they've appreciated the book, but it is primarily for that age, where picture books are magic, and kids want to sit down and read with you and really learn from a really great story. So
that's lovely. And one thing I really loved about the book is how naturally disabilities are integrated into the story. It wasn't like totally in your face, and now it's like, hey, this is a book about differences or those with disabilities, but instead we just see the characters being themselves, like the server in the cafe, or the bakery. He clearly has Down syndrome, and another character is in a wheelchair. And I found it so effortless and organic, and I'm assuming that was intentional.
Yes. Yeah, that is my mission with the books, is to make all of the ways that we're different seem natural, because we just want everyone to feel a part of it, right? We don't want anyone to feel like their differences make them on the sidelines. Or I even recently read a really great picture book that was written by a couple that I think they were both in wheelchairs, and the book was about how a kid with a prosthetic limb, he felt like everyone would say, oh, you're amazing all the time. You're working so hard. You're amazing, which is good. But the message of their story was that he just wanted to be like everyone else. He would have a friend that would work really hard to run fast, and she would win a race and not get any recognition. And he would, show up and be recognized. So I love that. And that's kind of the framework that I'm building off of too, is just being able to have characters who are living their best life included in the story, just so that we all start to see them as the part of everything, I guess, if that makes sense. So it was very intentional to just weave them into the story, and again, I want the message of the story to come through from the story, not from me telling the children. Kind of like vegetables in a casserole, right? We don't. Yeah. The kids enjoy the Jell-O more if they don't know the vegetables are in there. So.
Oh, 100%. And I know you mentioned in the beginning about, you were thinking you wanted to sort of highlight, if that's the right word, like Down syndrome. And obviously the server in the bakery, he has Down syndrome. So how did you decide, like, and as you said, it's weaved in so beautifully. Like, how did you decide kind of what disabilities you wanted to include?
That's a great question. So I wanted to start with Down syndrome because I grew up with a friend who had a brother with Down syndrome, and he was one of my favorite people. He was lovely and kind and just happy, and so it's always been a part of something that's important to me. So I wanted to start with that, and it was a part of the bakery that I had chosen to partner with. So Special Needs and Treats is not only the setting of the book, but I've partnered with them and I give a percentage of the profits of the book to them. So that's been a really great experience to be able to give back to them and promote their mission with the story. With that in mind, so how I choose disabilities to include, I want it to fit with the story and with the mission of the nonprofit, but I want to include, as many different types of people as I can, I guess. So in this story, there's a boy with a wheelchair. There's Charlie, who is a little bit OCD or autistic. There's a kid that's gluten-free. It's not, I feel like I've done it in a non-overwhelming way. But, if you were to go to a classroom or to a group of kids at the playground, you would see all of these things. Yeah. So it's just hopefully just a way to, and as I do more books, I hope to highlight even more disabilities. My third book is about a boy with a prosthetic limb, and I can talk about that later, but as I make more books, they will include as many as I can.
Oh, that's really lovely. Like, yeah, like you said, you could go to a playground and you can see all of those kids and you don't really think too much about it because they're just there and having fun and taking part. So yeah, that's really lovely. And I love, about the bakery, and that's so wonderful that, because when you said partnered, I wasn't sure to like how you were partnered, but that's so wonderful that you're also, giving a percentage of the profits back to the bakeries. That's really awesome, I think. And I'm sure
I want them to be able to employ more people at their bakery. They have a huge wait list, and the more people give, the more good they can do. So,
well, that's actually my dream. I would love to make it to come to fruition, is to have a little bakery where I can.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I do a lot of baking, and I bake a lot of cookies mostly, and it's been in my brain for a number of years now. I would love to do something like that. So maybe I'll have to get in contact with them and see how they're, doing it, because I need, and I think I need just like a little push to get it going. So, because, I think about all our kids who, some of them may not be able to work, but there's a lot of our kids who are able to work and who want to work. But, as I'm sure, from talking to the people at the Special Needs Bakery, is a lot of companies won't hire. I think it's starting. I do see it happening more now, where I do see people with disabilities in the workplace, which, I love, and of course I want to, support those organizations that do that. And I'm thinking, well, maybe I can do something as well. So
yeah, you should. And I'm sure if you reached out to them, they'd be more than happy to talk to you. They're very lovely people.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
And one thing that you said, these people want to work. And I think we all want to have a purpose, right? We want to have something that gives our life a little more meaning. So when we talk about them being able to work at this bakery, it's not just that they, need a little extra money or something like that, but they want to have something daily that gives their day meaning. And we all want that. We all want to have something that we're progressing at or feeling like we're doing good in the world. So
100%. Yes. And I've heard from, I can't remember who it was that I heard it from. And they're like the best employees. And, they don't quit,
yes,
you know?
and they will stick with the same task as long as you need them to.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I've heard too. And then, I love it. So that's wonderful. Now, I mean, we've talked a bit about this, but literally it's about how to eat a cupcake. And it turns out, as you previously mentioned, there's a lot of ways to do this. And you mentioned your husband, how he eats a cupcake. So did you draw inspiration from real life on how to eat a cupcake?
Yes, I would definitely say a lot of the ways were how my kids or my husband would eat. I have kids that will eat just the frosting off, or they'll take every little sprinkle. I have 4 kids, so that gives me a little bit of selection. But I also drew from like going to kids' birthday parties, or just seeing how people do things. I am a big people watcher, so I kind of observe and gather that information.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, I think I have to try the cupcake sandwich because I thought, oh yeah, that sounds interesting. So, and I too
It
always
does make it a lot easier. You don't get frosting all over it when you
exactly.
contained.
It is, yeah. And yes, I have seen kids who will only eat the frosting, or they don't want the frosting. Some people only want the tops; they don't want the bottoms. So there's lots of ways, as you describe in your book, on how to eat a cupcake. Now, and at the end of the book, you include some really great discussion questions, perfect for parents, teachers, or anyone reading with kids. And I really love that because it encourages conversations about inclusion, differences, and of course, cupcakes. So what do you hope readers, especially children, take away from your book?
Well, I think what I really hope is that they'll not only see people doing things differently around them and not feel that that is bad, but that they'll also see that what they do differently is good too. And actually that we each have different strengths and weaknesses, but things that make us who we are that we can really use to help people around us. If we all did things the exact same way, that would be pretty boring, and we would miss opportunities to really connect and need the different things that we each have to offer. So I hope that I could really hope that they'll just enjoy reading the book, because for me, I want my kids to love reading because it's such a gateway to learning and to growing as a person, developing empathy. There's research from Harvard that states that as we read books and discuss, questions to kind of dive into the book, the message, or, how did this character handle this situation, or how did this make them feel? All of those things help our kids develop greater empathy for others. And that's a world that I am striving for.
Yeah, definitely. And, and my daughter, Ainsley, she has Down syndrome and autism. She's a little bit verbal, but, I've seen the benefits of her being included in the general classroom. Like, I mean, I know she's not learning the same stuff exactly as they are. And, they're doing a little, she's grade 7, and they're doing like a little, I want to call it junior achievement. I can't remember what it's called now, but where kids learn, like, they make a product and then they sell it and stuff like that. And when I first heard about it, because I remember doing that as a teenager, and that her class was doing it, I'm like really ashamed to admit that I didn't think Ainsley would be able to participate, because I didn't think, well, what could she make? And, her EA came up with an idea and they worked on making it, and Ainsley helped with the name of it. And I was so happy, and that's showing that she's being included in the class. And I see her with a nice little group of friends who, really support her and encourage her. And that wouldn't have happened if she wasn't in their class. And,
Right.
because kids need to see that there are other kids with differences and you can still be friends with them. And it's, and for Ainsley, she likes to watch the basketball. And even some of the kids that aren't in her class, they will throw the ball to her and encourage her to participate. And it's all because of the inclusion aspect. Like, it's working. And there's just such benefit to including our kids in the general classroom, because when I went to school, there was none of that at all.
No.
Yeah,
There was a separate curriculum, right?
Yeah, I don't even know if they were at my school, to be honest. I never saw a person with Down syndrome ever in school. But I'm glad that that's really changing. And, and I think it helps that we're having books like yours out there that kids can see and that they can participate in. And it's great with the questions at the end that gets them thinking and, thinking that, yeah, it's okay. It's okay that people are different.
Yeah. And I think that the key is just realizing that, there's some differences that are very visual that we notice, but we really are all just different. And so I think as we recognize that, we accept more, because it just makes it easier when you realize, that we're all just very unique and wonderful, and that some of us are just a little more visually different, but that's just fine.
Yes, that's exactly right. And, as I said, like, I feel really lucky that Ainsley's school has been quite accepting of her. And I know that there's now another little boy in kindergarten that has Down syndrome and autism. So I feel like we sort of paved the way a little bit for him. But, I know it's not always the case for everyone. And I mean, you sort of touched on it, but how do you hope your book helps foster inclusion and understanding among young readers?
Well, I have been able to read the book in schools and at story times, and I think kids are naturally inclusive. I don't know that we necessarily have to teach them, but I think we have to show them as adults that is good, that their natural instincts to be inclusive are good, because as they grow older, they just are gonna they are little, they follow the model, right? And so I hope that as we show them that the adult world is inclusive, that they will just grow into that and they'll surpass us, I'm sure, because I just think that our generations have slowly realized, how important it is to be inclusive. And there's been a lot of people that have worked very hard for that. And I'm just so hopeful for the future with the kids that are, whenever I talk to kids about it, they get it. They are having friends of all abilities, like you mentioned with your daughter at her school. I think the more opportunities we give them and the more they see it, it's just going to benefit everyone.
Yes, most definitely. Yeah, I agree. And I like that kids just kind of naturally know inclusion, that we don't necessarily have to teach them. So, yeah, I think that's really key, actually, for our kids.
So maybe my book is actually for adults. Maybe I'm really trying to teach adults that they should be more inclusive.
Well, rightly so, I do think. So, yes. I've really enjoyed our conversation, Jeana, but before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to share about your book?
That's a good question. Well, I would like to touch on the illustrations. I think it's important to note because the illustrations, like you said, are such a big part of the story. And I just want to thank my illustrator. Her name is Devika Oza, and she's of Indian descent. So she, I think, grew up in India and then immigrated to Canada. But she has that unique style that I was drawn to, and again, that's just another aspect of inclusion, that we include people that that bring so much to the table, and getting to work with her and collaborate with her to, we worked really hard to make sure that as we portrayed these characters, we did so in a way that was authentic. So the character with Down syndrome, we made sure that as people saw him, they would potentially recognize that he has Down syndrome, but also not, create a label or, build off of what might be seen as Down syndrome. I guess maybe that's not making sense, but
No, it does.
we're trying to be very careful to not have a generalized, because everyone with Down syndrome does look a little different. And so that was important to include. And also with the wheelchair, the providing a part of the story where a wheelchair could be naturally incorporated and highlight, how that person or that character is dealing with having a wheelchair. And so she was a wonderful resource to work with, and she did such a great job of also naturally including people with disabilities into the story. So
Yes, because when I first read the book, because it doesn't ever say that he has Down syndrome, I go, I think he has Down syndrome. And I went back to look and I go, yeah, because I do feel that it can sometimes be hard to, like I've seen other art where it's not as good and where you weren't sure. And I mean, obviously I think I'm more attuned to somebody having Down syndrome, but I thought it was really well done because like you said, it wasn't obtrusive, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word, but, because I went back to look to see, I go, yeah, I think he has Down syndrome. So, and I thought it was really well done. Like because sometimes I think when artists do our kids or like, for example, we were at this event and there were some caricatures, and Ainsley, my daughter, had one. It doesn't look anything like her. I mean, I get it was just a quick caricature, but it remotely didn't look like her. It was still fun to do, but I do think it's a skill, to be able to capture that, like, because it's a slightly different look. And I thought I thought it well done. Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely well done.
thank you. She
Yeah.
tried really hard to incorporate that. And I that word stood out to me that you said caricature, because we didn't want, someone with Down syndrome to look at the book and feel like singled out or yeah, we wanted to be very tasteful and appropriate and welcoming, to show it in a natural way. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say about that. But
Yeah, no, I think you definitely, that was achieved in the book for sure. Yeah, I think it was really quite lovely. So that's wonderful. But of course, the most important question is, where can people get a copy?
yeah, so there are a couple ways you can get a copy of the book. You can get it on Amazon as an ebook or a paperback book.
Mhm.
You can also purchase it from my website, which is paperseedpress.com.
Okay.
So Paperseed Press is the publishing company I created so that I could partner with nonprofits and give back to them and create these really inclusive books. So again, it's just paperseedpress.com, and you can get the hardcover book on my website. If you do purchase on my website, I am able to give more back to the organization.
Oh, that's lovely. And I'll put the link in the show notes as well so that people can get the book. So that's wonderful. Yeah, wonderful. Well, Jeana, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing about your lovely story of How to Eat a Cupcake. It's really, I thought, a wonderful book, and I really hope that lots of families and classrooms can get their hands on it.
Yeah, I hope so too. I hope that we all just really enjoy reading it and eating cupcakes in any way.
Yeah, eating cupcakes is a good thing. Thank you so much for joining me today, and a big thank you to Jeana for sharing her heart, her story, and her beautiful book with us. Representation matters, and stories like How to Eat a Cupcake help bring inclusion to life for all our kids. Until next time, keep on loving on your rockin' kiddos, and remember, I love you, and I see you.